Have you started? Yeah, started. Okay, so let's start. My name is Madhu Mishra, and I'm a third year PhD at ICE Thiruvananthapuram. Uh, a quick intro for our panelists. So we have Lata Joshi. She had done her PhD from IIT Bombay. She did her first postdoc in TFR for 2 years. Then she joined her second postdoc at University of Innsbruck. So now, and second, we have Parijit. She did her PhD from SINP. She was a postdoc at ISC. Now she has joined her postdoc at Uppsala University. Then we have Neetu. She's an integrated PhD student from IISER Bhopal. She'll be joining her final year in this August. Then we have third year PhD student Poonam from IIT Kanpur and a third year PhD student from IIT Kharagpur, Adrita Chakravarti. Then we have Semanti, a PhD student from IMSC. We have Priya, a third year PhD student from CMI. We have Kajal from HRI, second year PhD student. And then we have Aprajita. She has just started into research. She's in her first year of PhD, IMSC. So with this 9 panelists, we can start the discussion. So to start the discussion, I would like to say a few words. So science is supposed to be an activity open to all people regardless of their gender. However, the percentage of women scientists remains shockingly low and there is a significant gender gap at all levels. According to UNESCO Institute of Statistics data, less than 30% of the world's researchers are women. UIS data also show the extent to which these women work in public, private, and academic areas. Uh, but to truly reduce the gender gap, we must go beyond the hard numbers and identify the qualitative factors that deter women from pursuing careers in science. The panel will discuss the various aspects of gender gap, like what is the nature and extent of gender gap, why does it exist, why should practicing scientists care, what is the way forward, and last but extremely important issue of having a family along with your career. So recently, when we decided that we will have a panel discussion on gender gap, I was reading lot of article, and one article which actually impressed me or made me think a lot about this gender gap is there was a workshop held at CERN in September 2019. And in the workshop, there was an Italian physicist. He's a physicist in University of Pisa. He's a high energy theoretical physicist. In his talk, he argued that main reason that there are more men in theoretical physics is that women are inherently less capable of physics research than men. He further claimed that the basis of physics has worked in the favor of women and against men. So I would like to start the discussion in this at this point, and I would like to ask question. My first question would be: do you think gender stereotype works against women, or do you feel somehow it kills women's confidence? I would like to call Parijit for this, and I would like to know her view on this. Over to you, Parijit.
Thank you, Madhu. So I would like to thank the organizers of ST4 for organizing this wonderful panel discussion. And I am very happy to be here. And thanks all of you for coming in this difficult time. Hope everybody is doing well. So let me come to the topic of gender gap. So what do we mean by gender gap? Usually gender gap is the difference between women and men as reflected in social attitudes. And it is very unfortunate that throughout their academic careers, women are confronted with gender gap. Even in 2020, women in academia and specifically in high energy physics are often less visible and thought to be less suited in research than their male colleagues. So why do women continue to be underrepresented in academia? There are several reasons, and gender stereotype is one of the root causes for the discrimination, I think. What do we mean by stereotype? So stereotype means traditional ideas about what men and women can or should do. So stereotypes are everywhere in our society, and they start at a very early age. Now, as children, there is no limit to what we believe we can become. But as girls and boys, we steer into different directions growing up. So let me give you some example. So it is there in the form of toys that the kids are encouraged to play with. So people usually offer dolls and cooking sets to girls and trains or cars to boys. And this continues it continues often without a second thought. We also associate different colors to boys and girls. So for example, pink and purple are for girls usually, and blue or green are for boys. And at home, we encourage girls to help in cooking or laundry, and we want boys to go out for groceries. So these are the charges that we usually associate with the gender. And there is another thing which is very important. We discourage boys from crying from the very childhood and encourage girls to pick dance over karate class. So these are the things based on the biased belief that boys are tough and girls are delicate. And it continues to influence us as when choosing subjects in school. So for instance, girls are expected to be good at arts, while boys are expected to be good at science. So this is reflected also in the comment that Madhu mentioned in the conference at SAN. And as we go along from school to university, there is a huge number of female dropouts at each level. And I'm sure this is what we observe. All of us are aware of this. Very few women continue in physics, and out of which a significantly less number pursue career in high energy physics. And even if some of them finish their PhD, many of them don't stay in academia after PhD. So the place where I did my PhD from, there was no female professor in the theory division at that time. And in my batch, I was the only female student in theoretical high energy physics. Now, I think that women's self-esteem is the first victim of gender stereotypes. So it limits the capacity of women to develop their professional skills and take decisions about their lives. And this affects women around the world, regardless of their country's level of development. And this is encouraged by the society at large. It affects women from a very early stage, reducing their aspirations and limiting their career options. Now, according to a study, girls begin to feel less intelligent than boys from the age of 6. Now, neither girls nor boys are born sexist. There is something that we as a society do to them to reach that point. And this is very alarming. Now, let me share some of my experiences in this regard. So when I was in college, in first year, first semester, so one day out of nothing, somebody came to me and asked, how much did you score in maths in your 12th exam? And after I replied, he replied back, I have never seen a girl scoring such high marks in maths. Now, that is obviously not something I would like to hear. And like I heard this phrase many times in my life, that beauty times talent is constant. And this is discriminating in both ways. At some point, I was told that when I was opting for high energy physics, so I was told that, oh, you want to do high energy physics. You know that these things are very hard and requires a lot of effort. Are you sure you aren't mistaking? Now, in my opinion, so at that time, I got very frustrated and depressed. But now I think, in my opinion, it's okay to make mistakes. It takes courage to make mistakes. How would you know if you do not try? So let's give it a try. Let me give you another example. So after I submitted my PhD thesis, so I was preparing to go out for a conference, and somebody knowing this came to me and said, "Oh, you have finished your PhD, right?" So I said, "Yes." Then he said, "Isn't that enough? What's the point of attending a conference now? I wonder, how do you get permission from your family for that? There are many other wonderful things in life to do, right?" So I was shocked. And there was a clear hint what he had in his mind, that whatever you do, at the end of the day, the proper place for women is kitchen. I attended a conference, and surprisingly, I was the only female participant out of more than 50 participants. So all these things, so this says that like at some point, the sense of belonging seems missing. And I also had a similar experience, like what Madhu mentioned. So there was a conference last year here in Stockholm. So during a talk in the conference, and the session was dedicated to this gender issues. So there was a talk in the conference, and one of the speakers said during the discussion session that women are not supposed to work in fields which involve heavy computation. So these things are there everywhere around us, and we face it every day. And there are also other issues, like we often hear that being women, we are privileged and we get unwanted favors that we are not supposed to get. Now, let me tell you something funny. So I had to write few emails to some airlines over the last few days. And 9 out of 10 times, I received a reply which started with, "Dear sir." And this happened to me several times in my career, and it started at a very early stage of my life. So I was planning to visit some institutes, and the invitation letter at some point, so it said, "Dear Mr." And it is very annoying every time to tell that, "Look, this is not sir, but ma'am." Now, having said so, let me ask if there is everything wrong with stereotypes. So I would say not necessarily. It is perfectly fine for girls who love pink and boys who like football. In my opinion, the problem arises when stereotypes limit the goals of men and women. There is nothing wrong if the same person likes pink dress and prefer karate class simultaneously. Causality is not violated by doing so. So we have to recognize our stereotype behavior and work to change for it. So we should not push the kids into some pre-assumed box. So we should build our lives based on our own choices and not by stereotypes. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Parijit. Thank you for your words and its moving experiences that you shared. Now I would like to go ahead and share something. I was going through the data, and I saw that something seems to be happening around the age of 16. Up to until this point, most girls who have studied science have physics in their top 4 grades, but then they quit. Why? Why do you think that they quit at age of 16? What do you think is lacking for the motivation? Why do they like physics? They want to do maths. They want to do calculation, but at the age of 16, they just quit. Uh, because if you see in the school, there are equal number of boys, not if not equal then not less, equal number of girls and boys taking maths. But when you go forward in your BSc and even in maths for MSc and PhD, you see the number of girls uh, decreasing immensely. So what do you think? Why is the reason? I would like to ask Aparajita to go ahead. Aparajita, over to you.
Yes, hi. First, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks to Madhu for giving all of us this opportunity. Now, before I go into exactly thinking what reasons I think which uh, uh, which has created the gender gap in high energy physics, I would like to take a step back and talk a little about how women actually started to study and work throughout the world. If you look at the 19th century during industrial revolution, women were more they had to focus on domestic chores because most of the industrial work required a lot of manpower, etc. But women, for the first time, women were actually seen to move out of their homes was during the World War One, and there women played a major role in the workforce because all the men had to go and serve the nation. And later on, because of various social and economic developments, women again started to play a prominent role because public education required women to become teachers. And the industrial and commercial enterprises made them go into office works, etc. etc. And even the invention of power, it created a shift from man labor because even women could take part in it because it didn't require much of manpower. So all of you might be wondering the reasons why I mentioned these incidents in particular. Well, I would like to highlight two main facts. The first one is it's kind of similar. I think it applies for men and women. Is that like jobs and opportunities were basically shaped according to economic and industrial conditions for everyone. Only somewhere in the 20th century, people, including men, they were encouraged to go ahead and pursue their dreams. I have seen this in my grandparents and my parents also because back then they had to do only engineering or medicine. But the second reason why I mentioned this history, a small, these few incidents, is because that it highlights the fact that women were employed just mainly to substitute men because men had they kind of implied that men had to do some work which was more important. So in order to substitute them, women were brought into the picture, and they were also made to study and work just because they wanted to provide some additional support to their families. But the work and dream of men were always placed at least one level higher than women. Uh, so because of that, people thought that it was not that it was more than sufficient if women took up jobs that are well known or something that has a clear trajectory. People can visualize the future or something in those lines. And this is the reason why women are few in number, even like in especially in research. But even if you look at aerospace engineering or mechanical engineering, people really don't see women doing such things because it's not really clear. So this is this kind of I want to emphasize on the fact that some fields there's not much clarity, and the lack of clarity is the reason why there is a big gender gap between men and women. Now, if you look at science, uh, it started gaining popularity sometime in 20th century, but uh, from from whatever I have experienced and from all the people I have spoken to, many people, the first impression that comes to their mind when they say something about science is people go to labs, do experiments, and draw conclusions, and hence that's how they carry forward with research. And because of this, and to fit into the mindset that women should do something where people have some clarity, you can see a lot of women in fields like biology, chemistry, more than physics. And even in physics, there are more women who go into like material science and other subjects. For example, I did my master's from IIT Guwahati, and I had 7 other women classmates. Most of them, not most of them, I think everyone was really intelligent and they had various capabilities, but in some way they felt that their option was restricted to condensed matter or other things and experiments, and they really didn't want to venture into high energy because it didn't seem quite popular, and people really couldn't see themselves where they would be in a few years. Uh, and so I think this it plays a crucial role. And another thing is that the whole thought of theoretical physics, people think that it's only for prodigies and really smart people, and it's not much for common men or other people who just have a fascination for physics and they really like it. Uh, as a matter of fact, high energy physics in the places where I live in and around, people have never heard of this word high energy physics until Higgs boson was discovered. And to be honest, high energy physics actually lacks advertisement compared to other fields. So this lack of clarity and awareness, and along with the history of women employment, how they're just made as substitutes, it holds back women from pursuing high energy physics. So even like to add on to, I had a similar experiment like Parijit. Whenever I say that I'm going to pursue research in high energy, people just look at me with a lot of concern and worry. They're like, why are you even going into this? Like, it's not the thing. Just go into something which is more common. This is the common mentality that comes. So I think the lack of uncertainty plays a real big role in why women don't go much into high energy physics. And because of this lack of women for us to look up to in high energy physics, uh, and it really does affect the women who are there right now. As a matter of fact, the first names that pop into people's mind when someone says physics are Albert Einstein and Isaac Newton. But not many people are aware of Emmy Noether, who basically her work in symmetries is pretty much the backbone of quantum field theory. I feel that inspiration and role models actually shapes one's interests and dreams because they have something to look at and they can get a good vision. And I take a lot of inspiration from a lot of physicists like Heisenberg, Feynman, Weinberg. But the fact that there aren't many women for all of us to look up to, subconsciously it resists women in the field of high energy physics. So I think these are some reasons that I wanted to put forward regarding the gender gap in high energy physics. Thank you.
Thank you, Prajita. I would like to ask attendees if they have any questions, please comment your questions in the chat box, or you can just raise your hand if you want to ask any question with these two. Because we have covered stereotype and why. So Nishant has raised hand. So I will ask Nishant to please unmute himself and then he can ask question.
Yeah, hi. So I have a question for Parijat. Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So first of all, I would like to congratulate her and Aprajita for this like amazing talk and giving us the insights into the problems that they face. And also, I know like many of my friends too like face this sort of problem. So basically, the reason that Parijat was saying that it's due to the gender stereotypes and the social inequality in our society, which I completely agree. Uh, hello.
Yes, sir.
Audible. Please continue.
Yeah. So, which I completely agree. But one thing that is like baffling to me is this that in Scandinavian countries, right, the society which is supposed to be an egalitarian society where there is no gender inequality, like it's supposed to be like one of the most equal between two genders. There, it was found that women in the STEM fields, like basically physics, engineering, so their percentage goes like very low, up to like probably 23%, and like something 17 to 23% varies for different STEM fields, right? But in suppose in Turkey and Qatar, which is like you would consider it's a very highly inequality in sense of gender inequality. There, the percentage of women going STEM into STEM fields were more than supposedly in the egalitarian country. And this is one of the research that has like that people have found it really baffling, and they have particularly no explanation that why is it so. Okay, so my question was, and then they had this, they voted and they asked for people's opinion. So there I tell you that only 1% of people thought that it's basically has to do with some social inequality, and majority of them had to say that it's basically, it can be just a different interest. So because you'll find women more in like history, medicine, and other, this art side thing. And so they were saying that basically it's just a matter of, interest. So I would like you to probably share your views or comment on this thing, like because it's very hard for me to see. I understand your perspective from the Indian society point of view, because here definitely girls are discouraged, a lot. There's a lot of things which are opposite to you, but now we have this model, and then that this thing is happening there also. So if you can just share your like, what do you think maybe, the reason for this, and yeah, if you just can share your views regarding it. So make me help me and better understand this thing. So yeah, that's my question.
Hi, Nishant.
Hi.
Yeah, so I completely agree with you that Scandinavian countries are supposed to be like better behaved compared to other places in this regard. But the example that I mentioned, that was some conference in Stockholm, and the speaker was who was speaking on that gender issues. She is a professor in the gender studies department, and she mentioned all these things, and like all the problems and issues that we as a female face during like our research and all these things. But what was surprising, that after saying all these things, she concluded that women should not come into like some field which involves heavy computations. So I think that is not something we would like to hear, because it's a very discriminating statement. So it's not because of that, and people doing high energy physics, like it involves a lot of
Yeah, I completely agree with you. That was like very shitty of her to say that thing. Uh,
yeah.
but so yeah, regarding this study, like what, like, can you like say what can be the reason, like why is there more number of women go to the history and medicine side rather than the STEM side?
I think one reason could be that as we grow up, the lack of role models. So we all have somebody in like in our mind who we see as our role models, and in science, specifically in physics, we have very less number of role models. So it starts with probably Marie Curie, then Noether, and like only at a later stage of our studies we come to know the name of Noether. So there are very few role models. That's one reason. And another thing is that even after like saying all these things, that okay, we are equal, we should not we have to like make our kids understand this, that there is no such thing as stereotype. But even when we face the real world, like when we really go to work in our office and several places, so everywhere, every time we face the discrimination. And here also the same thing happens. It's, although it's much less compared to what we face in India, but it's still there. It's not that it's completely like some utopian society where we live here. So here also I have seen my female colleagues like complaining about the too much work at home, so that they cannot concentrate on their like work. So these things. And I have seen very eminent professors in the department who are very capable of doing good research. So they are like there is a huge burden of administrative work. So they have to spend quite a lot of time focusing on that rather than doing research. So at this level also there are this kind of non-cooperation that we face everywhere. So it's not, although we say that the things are getting better, but it's not completely eradicated. It will take time, and it has to start from the very beginning.
Okay, all right. Okay, thanks.
Okay, now we have Muthu. He wanted to ask some question. Muthu,
Yeah,
over
so
to you.
hi. So my question is to Nishant actually. Is the study that you're quoting the 2018 study by Stoit and Geary? Because if it is, the study was found to have very flimsy basis. Other groups could not reproduce the data that they produced. In fact, initially they didn't even out the methods that they had, used to compile this data. And people,
Yeah,
other research groups. Can I just finish? One second? The
yeah,
other research groups pointed out that this data is, the methods aren't clear, and when they did elaborate on the methods, other groups were still not able to reproduce the data. So can you just clarify if this was the
okay,
study
so
you were
I
referring
was
to?
I was like mentioning to the study here in 2016, so not that
Okay.
2018 one, which I'm not
Okay.
aware of. I'm just something that was like I saw a couple of days back, and I just wanted to ask. So it's a study in like
So
2000.
from what I know, it goes along the lines of this thing called the gender equality paradox, which gained a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah, yeah,
notice.
yeah, 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 yeah.
But it has been shown that no one has been able to use non-biased or the commonly used unbiased methods to prove this paradox, like in any way. Like the data has been flimsy always, is what I'm trying to point out. Like there has been no I don't know, objective out and out study that is accepted across all researchers that this data is correct from any such studies
Okay.
about the gender equality paradox.
Okay, all right. I didn't know
Yeah.
that. And thanks for bringing that out. But
Yeah.
yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, Subbu had some question.
Yeah, so I just wanted to point out at a reference. Okay, firstly, thanks for all the, excellent presentation by the panelists. I agree with everything they have said. I'm very happy to listen to it. So so there is this book by Cordelia Fine called Delusions of Gender, which addresses this question of whether there is any inherent difference between men and women. And she takes like various studies that have been performed, and she explicitly shows like how they were biased. I mean, this is related to this point about is it just possible that men and women are interested in different things? And she shows that all the studies which conclude that men are more analytical and women are more empathetic and so on are based on flawed grounds. So this might be a good reference for people like who are interested in these things about this interest point. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, thank you, Subbu. Okay, so any other questions? So Nishant is asking if you can share the book's name. Yeah. Okay, so moving forward, I wanted to ask Lata, because she's doing her second postdoc, and she's a role model to all of us who is just pursuing our PhD. Family support plays an important role in any woman's career and its growth. Achieving heights in a career generally begins with the family support. So I wanted to ask Lata, what kind of problem you faced when you were deciding to go at after your PhD for your postdoc, and then first postdoc and then for second postdoc, and what motivated you to go ahead no matter what?
Okay, yeah, first of all, thank you everybody who is present here, and more so ever to the organizers and Madhu, especially to organize this and to bring us all together on this topic. Yeah, so yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not well prepared, so I'm going to speak directly from whatever comes to my mind, because this topic is a bit complicated, controversial, and at least in this group, I don't want to make it too bland. So yeah, I mean, I can talk about family, and to answer Madhu's question about family support, I think that goes for everybody, male and female, that we need family support and to go on in any job. Especially in what makes physics and research different is that you need it takes a long time, and it's a harder road compared to other jobs where you have a kind of well-defined protocol to do things like 1, 2, 3, 4. Here you don't have that, so it's a bit of harder road, and it takes, of course, as Parijat said, it takes courage to follow this road. So because it's lengthy, family support is important, and this is where the gender bias comes that, I mean, since always, we women are supposed to get married earlier compared to, in a earlier age compared to our brothers. It's okay if the brothers are not married, even if they are more over 30, but we should be married before 25 at least. So that way families are all kind of afraid always whether to let their child go into this long field or not. And I think this thing that I just said has been told to me by some faculties also in India, that that this is a long road and it's a difficult road and all. So this, I think we are a generation where we are changing these notions, but they are very deeply rooted in all of us, male or female. And today that we are acknowledging that it's there, I think this itself is a big step. So for me, because my husband is also in physics, so it was so I didn't really face too many problems or opposition from family. I had my own share, which we can come to later, but yeah, I mean, because I had a family support, that's why I'm here. But yeah, in terms of fighting and kind of making them believe that I want to do it, oftentimes I didn't care. Whoever told me anything, lots of things, yeah, like this and that, I just probably switched off my phone and I did not care at all. Like many a times that I did not care about what people were saying. And I think it's important, if we are here to bring change, it's important that we do that at some points. And I guess guys also go through in their life, I'm sure they also go through through such phases where they have to do not care. I think this is also a stereotype thing that we learn from childhood, that you are a girl, so you have to care about how you look or how you talk and how nice you are to other people and blah, blah, blah. Whereas boys, at least in my house, boys were not asked to be careful. So I think that tendency we all have, girls have from the beginning, that they have to be careful about how other people are saying and all. So that's a big problem we face. So yeah, so we need to kind of leave that now that we know about it. And for me personally, in my PhD, when I joined that year, I was the only girl who joined. And then all throughout my years in PhD, I was alone in my string theory group. And in postdoc in TIFR, I was alone in a string theory group. And here also, I'm alone in my group of, I think, maybe 12, I don't know, 15 people, I think. So I'm saying this word alone and alone multiple times because it affects us at various stages. It affects us. Initially, when we enter into PhD, first year, second year, third year, we don't really care so much, but slowly as we see more and more difficulties, or we have to encounter different things and society and go international, then we do see some problems. So it comes in this form that, for example, for me, it happened to me more in TIFR than in IIT, because the cultures were a bit different. So for example, what used to happen is that I'm sitting in a room and I'm in a seminar room and I'm counting how many men are there. And I used to be always alone. So there used to be 15 men, 16 men, and I used to be alone. So that way, I have never felt an active discrimination, like somebody telling me that you cannot do physics because you're a girl. But small subtle bursts of various things keep coming continuously in my way, and which kind of tell us and let me ask that do I belong here, because I look very different, and then because I look very different, will I get judged more compared to what my male colleague will be judged? So those kind of questions come. And then in long term, this is also something I heard from somebody else last week. I resonated with it completely, that in long term, it kind of leads to a problem which is called as imposter syndrome. You start asking yourself, do you belong here? And perhaps you are here by chance, or maybe you are here by luck, because you don't seem to be belonging here. So it doesn't affect the professional behavior. So when we are discussing a project, a physics problem, it's all fine up to there. The questions come after your office hours, or in between your lunch, or when you are having tea. So there people kind of look for their own clone, and then they want to sit in group where they are more comfortable to talk about their own insecurities. I think guys look for guys, we also look for girls, so it's very normal human behavior. So so it affects us there. I think it's a big problem. So therefore having more girls around, and also having the males in the audience know that these things are some things that we go through while we are in the research. I think it's important. That's the point one I wanted to make. And point two, I wanted to make that because of this lack of girls uh, and the tendency to fit, what ends up happening is, this is something Nandini Trivedi brought up, and I completely agree with this, that what happens and what ends up happening is that you most of us live in hostels, so we have to go out and make friends, and also we go with our colleagues, and then because they are all boys, we kind of in long run end up doing things they like and start behaving like them, which is okay. I'm not saying it's wrong. We have, all of us have to be open, just that we lose our own originality because we try to fit. So I think it's not good for anybody to lose their personality. So I guess I wanted to also ask, maybe it's an open question for the audience, that when you see a girl dressed up coming to office, do you think that she's becoming a girl today, or do you think, oh, she's clever and she's also dressed? So yeah, I think I'll leave at this question. Yeah, thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, Lata. And okay, so Neetu wanted to add something what you said. So Neetu, over to you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madhu. And before saying anything, I would like to thank the organizers for taking this initiative. So yeah, I asked Madhu to just let me in after Lata, because I think what I want to say is along the lines of what she was saying. So yeah, I would start by saying that, yeah, as she said, there's no as such active discrimination that at least I have faced. Like, I haven't faced any active discrimination while in academia, but yeah, there are some subtle things which makes it a bit more challenging for the female members to like sort of pursue this. So I would like to focus my attention only in academia, and I would like to share some of the experience, like whatever I'll say, either it will be based on my experience or the experiences of people around me. So starting from the beginning of our PhD, so when we have to choose our guide, so the primary thing is to know, to focus on will be like, what is the topic that you are interested in, or what is the field that you want to pursue. But as a female student, like this sort of insecurity or sense of like, it's always there, that we have to think about the safety of the environment. Like, before we join a group, we have this thing in mind, like, will it be a safe group to join? So that thing is there. And also even after the, when we apply for postdocs. So this is what I heard from one of the faculties at my institute. So she is a faculty in biology department. She told us that while she was applying for postdocs, it was very difficult for her to get a position, because when she applied, there were many people who directly just asked her, are you married, or are you planning to have kids? Do you have kids? So these were the sort of questions that many people asked her. And these are the factors like which make it a bit difficult for her to get a postdoc position. And also, so the another important thing is, which we have heard a lot of incidents about the harassment. So there are a lot of news which come up, and I've seen people around me who have just compromised on their interest because of this thing. And I've seen people who have quit their PhD just because of this. And what happens is, when this thing happens, like some harassment happens somewhere, So especially in say labs where there are larger groups, and in more in fields like what I have seen, it's more in like chemistry and biology, that the other colleagues, the immediate colleagues that person have, they don't usually support, because they're scared of the fact that it might affect their PhD. Because if their advisor is doing something, and just to stand with the person who has suffered, if they stand with her, then it might affect their PhD. And this is not something which I'm just anticipating or I'm just imagining. This is something that has happened. Like I've heard this from a person who has suffered through this. So this is the thing. And yeah, I mostly wanted to just point out these things. Yeah, right now like this is all I can think of. Later on, if I feel something to say, I'll say it later.
Thank you, Neetu. So, is there anyone who wanted to say anything or want to ask any questions from Neetu and Lata? Please go ahead. Okay, so if there are no questions, we can move forward. And
Hi.
Hi, Simanti. Yes.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So I want to add one point about that, Lata's point about that we always try to fit in among boys group. So I have similar kind of experience. Like when I first arrived in my institute, what happened is I was assigned one office. So in that office, other people were boys. So what happened is, whenever boys have their own boys group, it happens to girls also. Like when girls have their own girls group, they will not try to mix with it. I don't know, like boys have some stereotypes against women, that maybe I should not call the woman first because she might mind anything or something. So when I try to fit in their group, I had to do a lot of things just to like become friend with them. So that is one thing. If there is number of women is very less, so I am not finding someone who will be like I can join as a group. And another thing I want to mention, like that as the number of women is so less in this field, what happens is like whenever a batch of women arrives, people just judge them on best of look. What happens is, once I heard one person, otherwise he's known as very nice guy, he was telling in front of me, okay, that so in my next batch, two girls came who were good looking, okay. So he was telling that, yeah, this batch some interesting girl has come. Otherwise, up to previous batch, the girls' faces are not even considering, worth of considering. So he was telling this in front of my face. So this people think that this kind of thing, this is very cruel to say, that you might want to find your partner, whatever you want to find, but you are telling one girl that you people, and another people was telling openly that I'm very frustrated in IMSC because the girls is so less and whoever comes, they are not even good looking. So they're telling, so this kind of thing exists among men also. This thing I want to tell. Hello?
Yeah. Thank you, Simanti, for sharing your frustration. And yeah, along with this line, I also want
something.
Yeah, I wanted to say that. Oh, you wanted to add something? Yeah, go ahead.
Can I? Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to say that after we were having this discussion, so I read about it and I also talked to my female colleagues, that everybody, I think all the females feel that because they are fewer in numbers, they get seen, whatever they do is seen more, and they have to work much more harder to prove what they're saying is right, and they have to kind of really come up with something very good to show that yes, you belong. Guys also have to do that, I believe, but they don't have that internal urge so strongly compared to as a female has, that she needs to prove herself. Because I think historically this field has belonged to them, so they don't really have this pressure that they need to again and again prove themselves and not be stupid. Because in research in discussions we end up being stupid a lot of times. But I think females also have this pressure of kind of not be stupid, so that they can be they don't feel like an outsider, or they are not seen like an outsider. Yeah, I just wanted to add this because this is also something which yeah, I know lots of females go through.
So this is like, I want to tell that it's not for everyone. Most of the people are nice, but there exist people like that who can comment like this, that girls' faces I like that was very humiliating. That he's telling in front of me that the up to previous back girls was not even worth considering.
Okay, Nishant has a question, but before that, Neetu wanted to add some points. So Neetu, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to add one point. So since I talked about the harassment, I would also like to say something about the other extreme. So which is when sometimes what happens is, and this is also something what either I have experienced or the people around me have experienced. So what happens is sometimes when you have a male advisor, so they are so sort of scared or conscious about all these things that they don't treat their male and female students equally. They prefer to sort of have more discussions with the male students rather than female students. So that also, I mean, although they have their reasons, and because such thing is there, so they are scared about this, but that this is also sort of something which affects, like, which affects our work and which affects the environment that we have around us. Yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
Nishant, now you can go ahead.
Yeah. So this is, I don't know. So this is one question that I had. That just like Faizan said that in Stockholm there was a senior women professor who shared that type of views. So I wanted to know from all of you if you ever. So do you think the women who actually hold authority or who are in higher power, they're kind of like desensitized with this issue and they don't share the same kind of concern that you have, so they don't, work hard enough to change things for upcoming women's in the field? Because I have seen, not in particularly physics but in other field, I've talked with friends, and they say that if suppose some women who are like HOD, and they are completely oblivious of like the issues that the like the women faces, like even from so it's okay, so it's not necessarily about the physics field. Like I know of medicine, know a field of medicine where casual sexism is like done from women who are in higher authority to the upcoming women. Like they keep pointing to, oh, why are you talking to this guy, or why are you being like this? And so like, have you come across any of such things, like while you were pursuing your career? So I wanted to ask you this, and yeah, so this is my question.
Yeah, maybe I can comment something. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure about your question, but the part I'm sure about, I can comment on that. That I think we should also be looking at the ratios. Right now, wherever I have been, it's been 10% girls. So 10% of the higher up women are talking about these issues. So we are an Indian community right now. So for example, we know Rohini Godbole is like leading this from the front. So what you are saying, I think ratio wise, there are many women who are taking these issues seriously, uh, and yeah, yeah, I don't know, I didn't get your question about harassment very clearly, so maybe somebody else can take that.
Yeah, so just to reiterate what my question was. So
Actually, your voice is coming from very far. If you don't mind, and talk
okay,
nearer to the
I'll
mic.
try to, yeah, and near to my mind. So I try to talk a bit low. So just to reiterate my question, so I was like I haven't talked necessarily to anyone in physics field about this, but I know like a lot of people in medicine field, like who are pursuing their PhD in medicine, like where there are like number of women in their fields, so like elder women, like so they kind of try to teach them this moral values thing, like casual sexism, and like okay, don't dress like this, don't talk to boys like this. So I was wondering if any of you had that kind of experience in physics. I'm sure it would not be like this, but just in case, like do you
Yeah,
have
so
this
so
kind
for me, I can speak for me that I don't have such experience, but I have one fun experience of probably of the similar family, that one pro female professor, they told me, yeah, but now that I think about it, it was not very wrong, but it was slightly wrong. That she told me that to survive in this field, you have to be aggressive. You cannot be like this calm and being nice, being polite and all. So she said that because there are all men and all this, you won't be heard unless you are aggressive. But I do see that it's not right. Like we know Shantini Didi is super gentle. So this was one stereotype which was which was attempted to force on me in my first year. But I think it's not necessary.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to answer Nishant's question. Yeah, can you hear me?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes, yes, yes. So I don't want to bring out names of institutes or anything, but I have not directly to me, but one of my classmates, she experienced something like that. Like in one professor was not treating her properly, or I wouldn't say misbehaving, but made her. He put her in a uncomfortable position, and during that time, she approached one female professor and few other people, and they were saying that you are so outspoken and you are so you go around talking to everyone like that. So in such, when such things happen, these things are natural. You need to learn how to manage that too. So I don't know, but the very tone in which she said it, my friend was really offended because of that. So this was one thing which I saw. This was one experience I saw my friend go through. So yeah.
Okay, Rohit had a question. Rohit, you can go ahead now.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I don't have a question. I have something to add to what Lata said and what Neetu said. So, what Lata said regarding proving and putting some extra effort to prove yourself, that is also seen in other cases of minorities. So it is more like prevalent in any kind of minority community where it's like 10 to 20% of the total population is being represented, and it has little to do with gender and more to do with the stereotypes that come with the minorities and all those things. That is what I think. I'm not denying any kind of gender stereotype prevalent there, but this kind of behavior is also seen in black communities. There are many literature about it, where the black person feels that they have to prove and to prove to white people by doing something extra, being more extra than what they are, than what the society demands of them or their culture demands specifically. And to add to Nitu's point regarding the faculty behavior with respect to boys scholars and girl scholars, at least in my department, I have seen this behavior quite prevalent, where the faculties, when they talk to male students, they talk closed doors and everything. But when they talk to female students, in the daytime, they are like open doors. And if someone asks them that why the door is open, they're like, we don't want to take any risks, and you never know what can happen and will not happen. Then I will be dragged into something like this. So there is also this scare between many senior faculties. Maybe they were not brought up in an environment where gender issues were big deal, or maybe they have ignored the other sex and tried to give them their due position. I don't know, but I have seen this behavior quite apparent in many of the faculties, at least in my department. And it has hurt me a lot of times. And that also has led to other behaviors, similar kind of tragic behaviors where people do think that women are more like a menace and they should be left out. This is like innermost circle discussions that I'm throwing out here. So yeah, that's it. That's like one side of the story. I'm just sharing.
Yeah, thank you, Rohit, for sharing your point of view. Subbu has a question for Neetu. Subbu, you can go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, it's basically what I typed. So I want to ask, like, so when one designs a work culture, I mean, like, how does the work culture affect, faculty treating male and female students differently? Like, do you think like discussing off the office hours or like over drinks and other social activities? I mean, I'm not generalizing. I'm asking, like, are these some of the things that has to be kept in mind? What is your view on it?
Yeah, so what I was saying is, so whatever you said, I think all these factors, they much more depend on each individual, because there might be some people who would prefer to be involved more in the like off the office hours discussions, drinks, or some other social activities, but
Right.
there might be some people, and sometimes this is this the huge gap in the ratio is also a reason why the female students do not want to join, because say for example, even in a conference or something, or even in my group, so I can maybe I don't mind of the hours discussions, but the point is that I can say for go for drinks with some people, like the people who I know, but if there's a large group of male members, there say 10 and 12 people, and I know only 5 or 6 of them, I prefer that I'll not join that discussion.
Right.
So these sort of things happen, and I am not at all saying that this is the whole responsibility of the advisor or the other male colleagues to make it happen, or this is something which has to be dealt with from both the sides. Like the conversation has to be open from both the sides. Both of them has to give some effort towards this. So say for example, with the advisor before say when a female student joins, or even for that matter even a male student, like I think since the student guide relationship is very important during the PhD, they can, in the beginning at least, they can have some discussion of like some light discussion, not like an intense discussion about the issues and all these things, but just to know what kind of a person that student is. Some might be an introvert person, like he or she might not want to join many discussions like that, but someone might not like that thing, someone might like more discussions and all these things. So what I feel is in this regard, the effort has to come from both the sides. But yeah, this sometimes it makes us at least I can say about me and the people I have heard it from, that sometimes this becomes a reason for us to feel left out, or just intentionally not joining the discussions because of this huge
Right.
gap in the ratio.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
And to join one point on Neetu's discussion, I also want to say that there are guides who make you very comfortable. So I wanted to share a story of mine. So when I completed my master and I was about to join my PhD, my guide Bindusa, he called me in his office, and on very first day he told me that from now you should not call me sir, because we are collaborators now. So I'm not any godfather of yours, so we are collaborated and you should feel very comfortable. If you have any point or any thought that you want to share, you should share without any hesitation. So in that I want to say that guide must play a very important role in your PhD, and there's this huge responsibility that you should make your student comfortable, and he did. So these kind of things really help. So there are people who make you comfortable, and I would also say that in my group, this we have a huge group, uh, including MS student and PhD student, and I was the only girl. We went out for dinners when I was only there, and I never felt uncomfortable. So yeah, so people can do such kind of thing where you feel comfortable and you will not feel left out when there is any discussion is going on. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, Madhu, can I add to what you just said?
Yeah, sure.
That, it's also, it again goes back to where we all come from. So, like you are saying that you never felt uncomfortable with a large group. I think it applies to me also. I have also not felt odd one out when I went with my department members for dining out and all. But I know many females who feel odd one out because they kind of don't connect with them at the level of outside office things, likes and things that they do. Like, we all are together because we do physics and that's all fine, but other than that, their likes, like for me and you, probably we like sports, so we kind of connect with boys. But there are very good scientists who don't like that, and they like the girly things that we talk about, like shopping or these kind of things. Then they feel left out outside the office hours. So I just wanted to say that it's not same for everybody.
Can I
So therefore having more females around will help at least those people.
can I just like add one thing, like, because it was also my group. So
Yeah.
one thing is that like even though we went for dinners and so on, it was only like once a year, once in 2 years, and not much physics discussion was happening there. But what tends to happen is like that even among PhD students, right? Like guys, we go to a conference and many of us go for drinking, let's say, okay, and for a girl who doesn't know like many of the guys, it may not be that, I'm just guessing, it may not be that comfortable to go for drinks or something with those men, and we go there and we discuss physics, right? And these kind of things happen at many places. So I mean, like when we set up work cultures, I was just wondering if like these things have to be kept in mind.
Yeah, I mean, not just physics, right? Also academic gossip. Who is
Yeah,
applying
right,
where,
right.
what's happening?
Yeah.
Okay, academic general gossip, which I was told yesterday that boys don't call gossip. They want to talk, give it a better name.
Yes. So can I say something?
Yeah,
Yes,
go ahead.
so just to add to what Subbu is saying, so I would like to just say one thing, that just because the ratio is low and some females might not feel comfortable going out, like for going out for drinks with a huge group of males, but but I think just because of that, we should not say that they should avoid doing that. I mean, I would say this is not enough reason to just say that they should not do it. I mean, it is completely fine if they do it. But yeah, sometimes, I mean, yes, I won't say anything more on this. But yeah, I'll say just because uh, this is the case, then they shouldn't stop doing this. Like, it's not like if females are not getting to do it, they shouldn't do it.
Yeah. I also don't have one opinion or the other. I'm just putting it out, and I'll stop taking more time. Thank you.
Okay, so Advait has a question for all of us, all the panelists. So the question is, in your experience, do women who are already in academia help younger students and postdocs regarding the issues we are discussing today? So anyone who wants to go?
Yeah,
I'm the only one speaking, so I'll give it this chance.
Yeah.
So I'll say that there are some who help younger students and postdocs, but I don't think this is always the case. And the problems or the issues that we have are not only because of the male colleagues. I mean, both of them has an, if not equal, but has some role to play in this. And but yeah, there are some, and I have been in contact with such people, but yeah, there are some who help younger students and postdocs, but not all.
Okay.
That's it.
And I want to add this to what Advait asked is, it's not that postdoc or the students who are already there, they don't want to help. It's that it's the inherent thing that we go for people who we know, and since the ratio is very low, we go. People generally go and ask whoever they find. If they find a male colleague for any question, if I want to ask that where should I apply for postdoc, I'll directly go to Subbu because he was my senior, and I've seen him doing all these things. So I'll go to Subbu. But now because I know Lata also and I know Parijit also, so now because I know other people, I'll definitely go for Lata and Parijit also to ask where should I apply for postdoc and how should I go for it. So because we don't know many people, there is always this hesitation that whom should be asked. But I am very sure that if I ask a postdoc, if they will definitely help.
Sorry. So let me just ask a similar question. Maybe the question is not very clear. I'm audible, right? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
So what I really wanted to say is that I think like the casual sexism it just exists everywhere. Like, and in a lot of male profs I've seen, and the question was that female professors who have already established in the academia, are they at least? I mean, of course, they're aware, but the kind of advice that you get from established people in academia, females, does it help or hurt in the sense that do they make you more aware of the issues and do they tell you the right ways to fight it, or because I've had friends whose female guides have suggested them very I mean things like, okay, you have to toughen up or you have to be more aggressive, otherwise you won't be taken seriously, things like these, which are kind of which are kind of, I don't even know if this is a good advice or bad advice, but I'm just saying generally, if do they really try to help, and if they try to help, do you think their advice is a good advice, bad advice? Is it okay? I mean, in this, because I think that the older females who are already in the opinion that I've heard from everybody, that they are just a part of the establishment now. They are almost same as other male profs. They behave like that, and so is there an awareness right now, at least in female established profs in academia, regarding these issues? That was the question. So sorry for taking ranting along.
Hi.
Yes.
Yes. So to answer you, I think there is less awareness clearly because in string theory seminar, we have never seen anything like this, what is happening in ST4, gender gap or anything. Although number of women professors is really less, but still there was no organization like that. But if you tell me personal experience, it's not, I have made only one person in my life as woman role model, that is Sayantanidhi, and she's sort of, I don't know whether she's outlier or not, she helped a lot actually. But I don't know, I haven't met any other person, so I can tell only this. But definitely there is not much awareness because it took our students to organize a gender gap discussion on student talks first. Am I right? Right? In Indian, any string seminar, there was nothing like gender gap in high energy physics or anything, right?
Yeah. That's yeah.
So they themselves, I think they themselves are not that much aware. But I think they are very, means if we go forward, they will be very helpful. And I feel like that.
Yeah, thanks.
I want to add my experience about this. that I think in my experience, fortunately, our string community is is not biased actively at all towards girls. We have all passive bias in our mind, but I'll keep that aside. But I had a female PhD supervisor, so she was extremely supportive of whatever problems I had, other than physics, whatever personal problems I had, or scientific attitude problems that I faced. And then, other than her, in CERC school, I have talked with Rohini Godbole and Nabamita Banerjee, and they did not, on their own, came to me and came to us saying that, look, these are the problems and keep watch for them. But whenever we went to them for some advice or some problems of this kind that we are discussing, they were very, very helpful to us, and also to add their own experiences and how to navigate through these things when you see such discrimination, what you should do, what you should not do. So they did share their experience and advices to young me whenever I went to them. Yeah, so for me, people were helpful.
Okay. Pavan wanted to add something. Pavan, please go ahead.
So I have a question about. So Madhu was earlier saying that her guide was very supportive, and he addressed this issue in the beginning itself. So do you feel, any of you feel that, what is the view on the fact that does academia have left too much on individual professors' whims and fancies rather than having a structural sort of, because is it true that academia has more sexism than, say, corporate companies? Because there also there is sexism, but I feel like there might be more avenues for a woman to address any harassment she faces.
Yeah, I won't say that academia has more sexism than corporate. I think it is everywhere, and I don't know if we can go for percentage, right? That there is this much sexism and there is less sexism. But we can talk about academia because we are in academia right now, and we have heard stories from corporate sector also. They have this similar situation where the male colleagues go for a drink and have party, and the promotion they helped in their promotion, and female feel left out. So I won't say that it is academia per se issue. Yeah, if anyone want to add something, they can go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, hello.
Right. Go ahead, Simon.
Hi.
Yeah, Simanti, you're audible. You can just go ahead.
Okay. So I feel that academia is doing better than other fields because here number of rational people are much more than other fields also. Because corporate, I have read in many websites that there is much more harassment to women, and which actually we can't even maybe think of. And in field of art, acting and sports, there is always a visible difference regarding paycheck and everything and giving importance. So according to me, in academia, women are better, but it is also limited to my experience. Like my institute, my BSc, MSc, and PhD institute is like that. But according yeah, that's what I want to say.
Yeah, I would also like to say the same. Depending on my experience, I would say that what I've heard from my friends who are in other sectors, not in academia, I feel that this problem is much more in other sectors as compared to academia. So this is all based on my experience. So yeah, that's what. Yeah.
Can I add some of my experiences in this regard?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I would say that I don't have much experience in like regarding this when I was in India, but I faced something here in Uppsala. So the thing is that like the sexism is like we normalize it. So it's so normalized that knowingly or unknowingly we don't, like, we hurt somebody. So let me give you one example. So here there is a group of students, so most of them were Indian, so they were like sitting in the common lounge, and like they were like gossiping and having coffee. So I was like, I just took my coffee and just tried to join them. But I was very surprised to see that as soon as I joined, the whole group stopped talking. And like all of us were like 7 or 8 members in the group, so they were like, everybody was uh, just having their coffee and nobody was talking. And I started initiating like some discussion, and I felt like there is something went wrong, and somebody said something which is very offensive, and it's a very sexist comment. So I faced this here in Uppsala, but I don't have any kind of experience as well. I was in India. So just to add this, thank you.
Okay, so we have discussed a lot about the problems we face as a female PhD student in academia. Now I would like to go forward and see if we can share some of the views or some of the solutions to how to tackle these kind of situation, and how we should go ahead and motivate other female students to join, or the female student who are already have working in the field to go forward and never leave the academia even if they have finished their PhD. So I would like to ask Priya. Please go ahead, Priya.
Yeah. Hello. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So first, I'd like to thank the organizers for organizing this panel discussion and for giving me this opportunity to talk. So the other panelists have pointed out that there has always been a selection rule of sorts in education and gender. And as Lata was saying, this is like Parijat was saying this, that this is a deeply rooted problem, that one that starts from schooling, where female students study just a bare minimum, say like 12th grade or a bachelor's degree, and only a few of them do masters, and even lesser number get into PhD programs themselves. So we have talked about what are the issues regarding this, but this lack in number, among other things, it leads to an environment where girls who are doing PhD, they don't seem to find adequate support. So oftentimes, women tend to doubt themselves. Lata was talking about this. Is it only me? Does it happen to everyone else? Am I the one who is misunderstanding stuff? So in such times, it is very helpful to have a support system of other women who can tell you, no, it's nothing to worry about. It's all right. Or, they can say that, no, this has happened to me too, and I have been there, and you're not on the wrong. So this is very important to say that that the woman is not on the wrong when the situations are like correct. Now, knowing that we are not alone, and having this support from women who can better understand these issues, so this is lacking for the girls who are doing PhD. But having said this, I would strongly emphasize that help in any form from men is always most welcome. And I will talk a little more about this in a moment. And before that, I would like to share something that I'm reminded of. So these are actually 2 lines of a comic strip that I read recently, where a guy exclaims that it is outrageous that he is unable to go out without fearing for his safety. And the place in question happens to be Paris, right? And the girl replies that, oh, luckily being a woman has uniquely qualified me for this exact situation. So what this comic strip is trying to say is that there is clearly some kind of an ignorance that these are the kinds of situations that women face all the time. And the example that I gave in the form of the comic strip was about harassment, but I'm sure that it applies to other issues as well. You know, it happens that sometimes unless we ourselves face an issue, we do not understand how problematic something could be. And this is why I stress that a female community and academia that will help in lifting each other up, that is very much needed. So having said this, clearly not all of us, including other women, are qualified experts who can, like resolve other people's issues. You know, we all have our own issues to deal with, and we all find ourselves at some point of time where our boats are sinking, and we are clueless on how to fix our own issues. So we might ask, okay, how do I help? What are the things that I can do? So there are many ways of approaching this problem, and this brings me to my next set of points. We know that many institutions already have a counselor in place precisely for this reason, and all we need to work towards is removing any sort of stigma associated with talking to an expert. So if you think about this, it's not very different from physics. Like when we are reading something and we are stuck with something somewhere, we approach the expert in the topic. And a counselor plays a huge role when there are very few or no female colleagues to talk to, and if when you really need expert opinion. And secondly, gender sensitization workshops, as it was already mentioned, they need to be held to spread awareness. The need for this is actually many-fold. The Paris story that I talked about. So a workshop of this kind will allow people to get to know each other's problems and form a strong sense of community among all academicians. And this very panel discussion is one such means. And we can pull in ideas and brainstorm all possible ways of combating this issue. And also such workshops, they provide clarity about issues of harassment, stereotyping, and the need for women, the need to talk to women about their work. Also, harassment itself is a huge problem, and it has many facets to it. And others have also mentioned, and I have also known female PhD, female students who have quit their masters or their PhD education due to some form of harassment that they have faced. And this harassment, it could come up from people who are in positions of power, or it can come from colleagues, or it can come from any other member of the institution itself. And it may happen that strict action was not taken on the part of the institution, and this sort of leads to people to lose faith in the system and hence discontinue their education. So another need for these workshops is that there is no fixed definition of what constitutes harassment, because what might be okay with somebody, it might make someone else extremely uncomfortable. So as bizarre as it sounds, in some cases people do not understand that they are being harassed or that they are actually harassing somebody else. The reason this happens is that everybody seems to be okay with it. It's kind of normalized, and it happens all the time, and there should be nothing wrong with it, right? So there was this point about how society is supposed to be like better than the other kind of society, but I think that society really kind of shapes its opinion based on several things. One thing that I can think about is the entertainment industry, like where they make films, where there are dialogues where they say that, oh, women think through their glance. And when we have people who are laughing about it and enjoying such kind of movies, I don't think there can be really much progress made in terms of the society. So this kind of mentality needs to be washed out, that it's okay to, like, this happens, harassment happens, and it's not termed as harassment, it's just a casual remark, and it's okay. So that mentality, that needs to be washed out. But there is also the other way around. Okay, something that one of the panelists mentioned, that there is a fear among the male members of the community when they are dealing with female students. So such issues could probably be resolved by having an open dialogue with the said student, like Madhu said. I think that there should be some kind of open dialogue from both sides, where they say that, okay, like we are okay with this and we're not okay with this, and so on. I feel that these programs might really help in those kinds of things. Also, merely holding such programs is not sufficient because we need both men and women from faculty to students to participate in them. And I heard that apparently in one such gender sensitization program, there was just one, like a single male participant. And supposing someone from outside of academia were to come and attend those conferences or programs, and if they were to sleep through the talks, they might get the idea that the gender gap is actually the reverse of what it actually is. So, on a more serious note, however, these programs should not be tossed aside as just another women's program, and all genders must pitch in. Also, further support from the institutions come in the form of childcare. Lata was talking about family, the role of family in women's like higher education, and we all read about the two-body problem in school, right? There is also the two-body problem in academia, which affects women much more because childcare is somehow thrusted onto them, and I feel that more institutions need to have a childcare facility to ensure that women don't abandon their careers to take care of the family, and also to ease the burden of those who are trying to juggle both work and family. So, as a final point, we will move on to society's role. This is a hard nut to crack because it is something that takes a long time to change. But I believe we can get there if the men and women in academia they play their roles in addressing this issue. And we can start by talking to our family members and making them understand that okay, so these are the issues that are there. And so, as I said before, this issue requires patience and good dialogue from both parties. Yeah, so this is what I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Priya. To add to Priya's point, I also wanted to mention because we discuss a lot about harassment, sexual harassment we discuss, but I also wanted to mention that there is a mental harassment also, which is there, and often people see as a that the guide is strict. So there is very fine line between being strict and mentally harassing someone. So we should be able to recognize that this is a harassment, not just being strict. So yeah, and addressing systematic problems such as sexual harassment and mental harassment should be must.
Yeah, so when I talked about harassment, I kind of like I don't just mean sexual harassment, all kinds. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, because people give more importance to the sexual harassment.
Yeah.
While I think the mental harassment is equally important, and you should not just go ahead and say that, oh, my guide is very strict. You should be able to find that is he mentally harassing you? Are you not able to work because of his pressure? And you should address these kind of issues. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when it comes to a woman, the first thing when we talk about harassment, the first thing that they think about is just sexual harassment. But then there is also, as you say, this mental harassment, and that also needs to be addressed. Yeah.
And also, I want to say that just a general remark that when you talk to women, just talk about science, credit their work, amplify their voices. And also, to the last point, I want to mention that we should start steering away from advertising physics as a place for genius. Instead, tell the true story that we go through a lot of hard work and effort, and we accomplish things through being a constant work in progress mode. So, just saying that, oh, you're going to do physics because you're a genius, it's not true. You can do physics if you are hardworking also. Yeah, so if do you have is there anyone who want to add any solution or any point they want to add to Priya's point? Please raise your hand. Otherwise, Aranya has some questions. If none of you want to raise any point, I can just go ahead and read his question so other people can answer.
Say something.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes, so talking about the solutions or the things that we can do at our level to deal with this. So, one of the things I would like to say is I've noticed many females, like when they talk about their problems, I've seen mostly like if they have some problem, they prefer to discuss it among themselves. Like they avoid putting forward the problem. So I we can do to like make it like to put the problems or the things that are there more forward and open, so that people don't just ignore them. Or I think that will play an important role, if rather than just discussing among themselves, they also discuss about their problems to the male colleagues. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, so I'll just go ahead and read out Aranya's question. And there are two questions, and these are for all the panelists. So the first question he's asking is, many of the problems that are being discussed are results of lower number of females in our community. If we want to talk about solving these problems, how much important role do you think the family has to play compared to the society? And if the family is not supportive, what extra roles can be different part of society play to encourage an individual? So Aparajita, you can go ahead and answer his question.
Hi, Aranya. I would like to answer the first question. I feel that the family plays a very, very important role for a woman, or in fact, for any student to pursue research, especially in high energy physics. I have seen this in and around me because I'm very thankful to have a very supportive family, and my parents are always like, pursue what you really dream about, and you don't have to read too much into the future. However, I have quite a few friends who were at some point in time they did think about pursuing research in high energy physics, but someone in their family and even the parents were like, okay, you can give it a try, but just remember, like in the future, if you have to get married, you need to be ready to give it up, and things like that, which really demotivated them into taking up high energy physics. And so I really feel that family plays a very important role for especially women to pursue a PhD in high energy physics. And one way in which you can try to be successful, irrespective of what is going on, is uh, you don't have to fight back, but we need to. I feel that this can be solved either by the individual themselves, and their classmates and the colleagues can really support them in combating these issues. So individually, I feel if women need to stay strong in the fact that they really want to pursue high energy physics, and they shouldn't come out as arrogant. But in some cases, that's what happens. But I think it's a slow process in which women can try being strong about it. And secondly, this is one point which I really wanted to mention was when like the male colleagues along with the women, they play an important role, because you have many of them saying that no, you should fight back, you should do this, you should make it a, don't let it go. But they need to understand that sometimes you can't force women to take out pressure in their family. The best they can do is be supportive and uh, help them in their academics, and probably like asking questions and more into like intellectual talks, rather than igniting like I don't know what to say, making it a very unpleasant experience for them. So this, I hope I have answered your first question.
So I would also like to say something. Yeah, to answer Aranya's question, I would like to tell a story, and I would not say like who should play what role. I think it will be apparent from the story itself. So there's a PhD student at my institute, and she had to fight with her family to join PhD. They were not ready to let her join a PhD or pursue her career in research. but she fought with her family and she finally managed to uh, join PhD. But after she joined, the first thing that her guide asked her was like, are you planning to get married while doing PhD? And what her guide said is like, if you're planning to get married, then I can't take you in my group, like, because then you'll lose your focus and you'll plan to have babies and all these things. So her guide said that if she has plans to get married, then uh, she or he they won't take it. They won't take her. And I don't know if like she's continuing her PhD, but I'm not sure if she's doing it with the same person or not. But yeah, this is what happened.
So I just want to make a comment in this regard. So I also have similar experience from some of my friends. So she was supposed to join a lab, and her supervisor in the lab, so he put some constraint, and there was a strict clause uh, which says that she can't get pregnant while she is working in the lab. So I think it's important to mention that these things happen, and these are quite like uh, serious issues that women face, specifically people working in the lab. So that's very important, I think.
Okay, Lata wanted to add some point for the solutions. Lata, you can go ahead now.
Yeah, I think most things have been said, but I was saying that Aranya was asking whether family has a larger role compared to society. So yeah, I mean, I think it's very difficult to define, but what I wanted to say is that we ourselves have the largest role to play, and the colleagues around us have larger role to play. Because for family, I mean, we are now talking about profession, about our academics and all, but I think for all of us, we have to fight with families about everything every day, about our partner, about how we dress up, about the things we want to eat and all. So I think the family is one aspect which is a constant part which we need to fight with. But so I guess for me, I think in my opinion, society and our colleagues and us ourselves is a bigger part. And in this regard, I want to share one story that we were talking about. I was asking one girl that has, in her experience, has she ever done herself any bias towards a male and female uh, person. And then she said that yes, she was teaching, and then at some point she realized that when there was a girl coming in front and writing solution of a question on board, she said that she thought the teacher thought that it's definitely she has not done it, she has copied it from somebody else. And then this student came to her at the end of the class and said to her that I feel that you don't believe that I have done it. So that day this girl said to me that that day was her realization that she has this bias in her mind. Until that she didn't know, because we have to, we have to accept that all of us have not seen that active bias. That is exactly why we are here today. But we need to also acknowledge that we have it in our back of the mind somewhere, but we don't know it. And such instances when people come to us and tell, see, you were biased to me. So because nobody was biased to us so much, I mean, to a large extent, we don't realize it. But I think it's more on us and the colleagues around us and the faculties around us to realize that because of whatever historical regions of male being dominant, we all of us have this bias in our back of the head that probably the male person will do a little bit extra better. I have to accept that I had it in me in 10 years ago, but and then the day I realized it, I dropped it completely. So I think this realization is important. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, Nishant had something to say. Nishant, you can go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's my mistake.
What? Nishant, do you want?
I raised my hand by mistake.
Okay, sorry. So Pawan wanted to say something. Pawan, you can go ahead.
So, to tackle these issues, do you know of any organizations in academia that are working on these, or in your institutes or pan India level, or is there any value in such organizations?
There is STEM who are working for this gender gap issue in STEM. So women, so it's called science, technology, engineering, and maths. They are continuously working towards this gender gap issue. That I was reading, and then I got to know.
Yeah, I just want to add something that I think it's already been said. So all of us have to make sure that the sense of belonging that is missing somehow, that should be there. So we should not treat our female colleagues as outsiders. So we should treat them as like as only colleagues. So we should not be biased on their genders. So just we should talk to them like the usual way. We should hang around, we should go out for drinks. So that sense of belonging, I think it's something which is missing, and that is very important. And as a whole, we can do that. Yeah, I think Madhusudan is pointing this out over chat. Yeah. And this is very, I think I would like to mention this. This is the first time I am participating in such a discussion. So over like in the last probably 10 years. And it's very important that we, I mean, these problems needs to be addressed regularly. So this is very important. Yeah. That's all.
Okay, so for the last part of the discussion, we wanted to point it out that there is an extremely important issue, which is having a family along with a career. So we have almost, I think, have covered it. But if in the end, if Lata wanted to say something, she could just go ahead and say.
Yeah, I'm still smiling at the chat box. I think I should close it. Yeah, I think so. Right now, I am in Europe, and I see a difference in Indian culture and in Europe. The difference is that here, people look at PhD as a normal thing in their life, not as something which, not like in India, we see it as something like a chirag, which we do. If we do it very well, then we will get good postdocs, and then we'll get good faculty positions. And also I think we harp on it too much, that we put all that we are going to do in life on the PhDs that we do, and also first postdoc, and I guess then second postdoc also. So it becomes too stressful to think of families. And I guess all of us know that most of us prefer having a family. I'm not talking about just a husband being married, or I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about having child. So it's a very common that people defer it to later ages, which should be their personal choice, but should not be forced by them on them by a culture, which is happening in our Indian research culture. That is one which is important in my eyes. And then number two, I can share my own experience, which was like, I think this is I won't say only, I have had some bitter experiences, but this was the worst experience I had because I was a female. So when I was pregnant with the child, and that time I was in Bostock. So somebody who is a faculty and who is a male, they told me that, and of course, please, that most of the people were supportive. So we are talking about the people who were not. So this guy told me that because I have chosen to go into this path of having a family, and then now I will be distracted, not giving so much time to my research, which is true. I mean, that's true. But because of that, now I will never succeed. And then now my career is over. So I was in first year of postdoc, towards the middle of the first year of postdoc. And so this guy told me that now my career is over and there is no hope, and their behavior completely changed after that. I mean, we used to discuss physics for long time, since long time actually. Then their behavior completely changed, and it is not something I'm cooking up. And then they told me that, yeah, so I think I remember their clear words. Their clear words were that I have done something. How could you even do this? Because you have planned it in a very wrong time, because after this you are going to lose a lot and there is no comeback. So they were very upset, very disappointed, kind of. I think they thought that they have lost a researcher in science. I don't know. I mean, they felt super painful because I chose to have a family. So I think this has to be, this culture of differing to have family later, and that's the only right thing to do, should change. This should be left to a person to decide on their own. At least we can be supportive in that. And I want to add that the person who is doing it, who is planning, who wants to have a family, who is planning it, they already in themselves know that they are going to left behind at least by 1.5 years. And then after that also, because they want to work hard, that's why they're here. So they will give 10 hours per day, but they will not give 15 hours like their other colleagues will give. So those kind of constant troubles and confusions are already there in that person's mind. So the least a colleague can do is to be nice and not add to their tension, to say that now you are done, now you are finished. So I think we need to be human, at least in this point, towards everybody around us. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, thank you, Lata. Is there anyone who want to add any point or to say something? Please go ahead and unmute yourself and you can just say something.
Anish, you can unmute yourself.
Oh yeah, Anish.
Yeah, hi. So I have a question to Lata, primarily because you said that you had a child in your first postdoc. I mean, now in hindsight, did it sort of affect your sort of career trajectory significantly, or do you think that it didn't affect it enough, or you think that it wasn't worth? I mean, it didn't make that big of a difference in your priority. Can you make any comments on that?
Yeah, definitely. No, yeah, I think about it. I guess, all the time. Yes, it did change my trajectory, and it changed. I had to think about my priorities, but that was my choice. Like, nobody forced me to do that. So I think if it comes to your own free will, how you want to accommodate your child and your career, in which direction, I think that freedom should be there. So for me, my choices and my what do I say? My preferences changed. I had to change it to accommodate a child, but I did it very happily. So things changed, yes, and yeah. I think it's impossible to stay the same once you are in a family. It's impossible to stay the same.
Right. And on as a follow-up, how how did you manage the two-body problem? Because if both of you are in physics, I suppose that how difficult was that?
Yeah, I think it's a very important question that you asked, because yeah, I have suffered from it for a very long time, because when I was in IIT Bombay, so my husband was that time he was in London, and I think I traveled so much to London that Air India staff actually, so one of them knew me. So it was a constant trouble. And then we used, I don't know, initially we used to talk a lot, then we thought that, then we realized that talking a lot is making it worse, so we stopped talking a lot. We talked every weekend. I think there is no easy solution to this, but for me at least, I can say that I never gave up what I was doing just to be with my husband. Both of us tried to kind of find a middle way. For example, he wanted to be in UK, but he took Europe because at that time when he took Europe, I had more possibilities to have a postdoc in Europe. So I think this has to come from both sides, some kind of sacrifices. In my understanding of family life and career, not everybody will get everything. So there has to be some bit of sacrifice, but it should not come from a part where you feel pain about it. It has to come from a part where you want to do it. And then it doesn't matter so much. I mean, I can also comment on how it has affected my research. So after I have slightly changed my trajectory, and now I'm in this place where I have a family, and so I'm doing much better research than what I was doing earlier. So I'm super happy with the choices I've made.
Okay, thanks a lot. That was very helpful.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think keeping an open mind helps. That's all I can say.
Lata,
Okay.
was there any point when you thought of giving up postdoc or giving up the career? And what made you change that thought?
I think it's a very recent thing, like in past 1 or 2 months, where I thought that because both of us are in research, both of us are on some days, some evenings, and some late evenings we're lost in our thoughts, and that then affects child. So I did start thinking whether one of us can stay in research and other person can go to industries for research, perhaps not staying in academia. So I have to say I was thinking about it, but then I realized, then I also started to do some search and all. Then I realized that I don't like that so much. So so I stopped doing that, and I wanted to stay here. And I think I also talked to a couple of females to say the same, that because of a family, it's being difficult to manage, because research demands long hours of lost attention, right? You're staring at a wall and thinking. So or you are cooking but you are thinking something else. So I did talk to a female friend about it, and then they actually convinced me that because there are lesser people lesser females in academia, I must stay here if I like it. And that's the case. I mean, when I tried to see what people do in companies, I immediately realized that I don't like that.
Thank you, Lata. Are there any other questions? If there are no other question and no comments, would like to thank all the panelists, and I was especially like to thank Subranil because this was his idea to have a panel discussion on gender gap, and he made me do it because obviously he had no other option because I was the only female organizer. So yeah, thank you Subranil for that, and thank you all the panelists and all the participants who are here for this long 2 or 3 hour discussion. Thank you all. You can. Now you can stop the recording.